I remember the day as if it were etched in my mind. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows on the pavement as I walked into that cafe. It was a quaint little place, tucked away on a side street, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries. I had just finished a long day at work, and the thought of seeing Sarah, my wife of 15 years, filled me with warmth. We had a routine, a rhythm that felt comfortable and safe. I would often stop by this cafe on my way home, and she would join me after her yoga class. It was our little sanctuary, a place where we could unwind and share our day. As I settled into my usual corner table, I glanced around, taking in the familiar sights. The barista, a young woman with bright blue hair, flashed me a smile as she prepared my favorite drink, a caramel macchiato, extra foam. I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Life was good. We had built a life together, filled with laughter, love, and shared dreams. Sarah was my partner, my confidant, and the mother of our two beautiful children. I had always believed that we were a team, navigating the ups and downs of life hand in hand. But that evening, as I waited for her to arrive, a nagging feeling began to creep in. It was a fleeting thought, one I brushed aside as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through my phone. I had been busy with work lately, and perhaps I was just feeling a bit disconnected. I shook my head, dismissing the notion. Sarah would be here soon, and everything would feel right again. Minutes passed, and I found myself glancing at the door, anticipation building. I was excited to hear about her day, to share in the little moments that made our lives so rich. But as the clock ticked on, I felt a strange unease settle in my stomach. It was unlike her to be late, especially when we had plans. I texted her, but there was no response. I tried to shake off the worry, convincing myself that she had simply lost track of time. Then, just as I was about to give in to my anxiety and leave, a woman approached my table. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she smiled warmly. "Excuse me, are you Mark?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. I nodded, taken aback. "Yes, that's me. Do I know you?" She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I'm Lisa. I used to work with Sarah at the marketing firm. We were close friends." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of Sarah's name. I hadn't heard much about her work friends lately, but I smiled politely, eager to make a connection. "Oh, that's great. Sarah has mentioned you a few times," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "How have you been?" Lisa's expression shifted slightly, and I noticed a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it concern? "I've been good, thanks. I actually saw Sarah last week. She looked different. I hope everything is okay with her." My heart raced. "Different? How do you mean?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She hesitated again, glancing around as if ensuring no one was listening. "Well, she seemed a bit distant, like she was hiding something. I just thought you should know." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt a chill run down my spine, a sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake. Before I could respond, Lisa continued, "I didn't mean to alarm you. It's just that she mentioned she was going to a conference in another city, but I saw her at a restaurant with someone else. I thought it was strange, considering she never mentioned it to me." The world around me faded as her words sank in. My mind raced, trying to process what she was saying. Sarah had been acting a bit off lately, but I had chalked it up to stress from work and the kids. I had trusted her implicitly, never once doubting her loyalty. But now, doubt crept in like a thief in the night, stealing away the security I had built around our marriage. "Are you sure it was her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did she look like?" Lisa described Sarah, and with each detail, my heart sank further. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, was suddenly shrouded in suspicion. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, anger, betrayal, swirling within me. I wanted to believe that there was a reasonable explanation, that this was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, a part of me feared the truth. As Lisa continued to speak, I found it hard to focus on her words. My mind was racing, replaying memories of our life together, searching for signs I had missed. Had I been blind to the cracks forming in our relationship? I felt a knot tightening in my stomach, a sense of impending doom that I couldn't shake. Mark? Lisa's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. Are you okay? I forced a smile, though it felt hollow. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate it. But as I said the words, I knew that everything had changed. The illusion of our happy marriage was beginning to crumble, and I was left standing on the precipice of a reality I never wanted to face. As I left the cafe that evening, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to unravel, and I was powerless to stop it. Little did I know, the discovery of Sarah's infidelity was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the woman I had vowed to cherish for life. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and anxiety. I found myself replaying Lisa's words over and over in my mind, each repetition digging deeper into my heart. I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy for the sake of our children, but inside, I was a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a house of cards, and one wrong move would send everything crashing down. Sarah returned home that evening, her usual radiant smile lighting up the room. She greeted me with a kiss, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Lisa was mistaken. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation for everything. I wanted to believe that the woman I loved was still the same person I had married, but doubt gnawed at me like a relentless predator. Hey, how was yoga? I asked, trying to sound casual as I prepared dinner. I watched her closely, searching for any signs of guilt or deception. She seemed relaxed, her hair still damp from the class, and I couldn't help but admire her. But beneath that admiration lay a growing unease. It was great. I tried a new class, and it was really challenging, she replied, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I forced a smile, but inside, I was screaming. How could she be so carefree when I was drowning in uncertainty? As the evening wore on, I found myself distracted, my mind racing with questions. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if I shattered the fragile peace we had? I didn't want to accuse her without proof, but the thought of her being with someone else was unbearable. That weekend, I decided to take a trip to the city where Lisa had seen Sarah. I told her I had some work to do, and she seemed to accept it without question. I felt a mix of guilt and determination as I drove, my heart pounding with each mile. I needed to know the truth, to confront the reality that had been lurking in the shadows. Arriving in the city, I parked near the restaurant where Lisa claimed to have seen Sarah. My hands trembled as I stepped out of the car, the weight of my suspicions pressing down on me. I walked past the entrance, peering through the glass windows, my heart racing with anticipation. The restaurant was bustling with patrons, laughter and conversations spilling out into the street. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I might find. I had to know if Sarah was truly living a double life. I stepped inside, scanning the room for any sign of her. My heart sank as I searched the faces of the diners, each one a potential stranger or a familiar friend. I felt like an intruder in my own life, a detective on a mission to uncover the truth. And then I saw her. There she was, sitting at a table in the corner, her laughter ringing out like a siren's call. She was with a man I didn't recognize, his hand resting casually on the back of her chair. My heart dropped into my stomach as I watched them, frozen in place. Sarah looked beautiful, her hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes sparkling with joy. It was a side of her I hadn't seen in a long time, and it twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I felt a rush of emotions, anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of heartbreak. How could she do this to me? To us? I wanted to storm over to their table, to confront her and demand answers, but I was paralyzed by disbelief. I couldn't reconcile the woman I loved with the image of her sitting there, laughing with another man. As I stood there, hidden in the shadows, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I watched as they shared a bottle of wine, their conversation animated and intimate. I could see the way she leaned in closer to him, the way her laughter danced in the air. It was a stark contrast to the quiet evenings we spent at home, where our conversations had become routine and predictable. Time seemed to stretch as I observed them, each passing moment deepening the wound in my heart. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake from this nightmare, but I was trapped in my own silence. I felt like a voyeur, peering into a world that was meant to be ours, now tainted by betrayal. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I turned and walked away. I couldn't bear to watch any longer. My heart was shattered, and I felt as if I were walking through a fog, each step heavy with despair. I stumbled back to my car, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had just witnessed. How could she betray me like this? How could she throw away everything we had built together? As I drove home, the reality of the situation began to sink in. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, a tempest of emotions swirling within me. I had trusted her completely, and now that trust lay in ruins. I replayed the moments we had shared, searching for signs I had missed, clues that could have warned me of the impending storm. When I arrived home, the house felt eerily quiet. The children were asleep, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had just erupted in my life. I stood in the living room, staring at the family photos that adorned the walls, smiling faces frozen in time, moments of happiness now tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized that everything I thought I knew about our life together was a lie. I knew I had to confront Sarah, to demand answers, but fear gripped me. What if she denied it? What if she turned the tables on me, making me feel like the villain for questioning her? I felt trapped in a web of uncertainty, and the thought of facing her filled me with dread. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I could hear her soft breathing beside me, a reminder of the life we had built together. But now, that life felt like a facade, a carefully constructed illusion that was crumbling before my eyes. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, a wound that would take time to heal, if it ever could. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I knew that the next day would change everything. I would confront Sarah, and I would demand the truth. I had to know why she had chosen to live a double life, and what it meant for the future of our marriage. The storm was coming, and I was bracing myself for the impact. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow in our bedroom. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with the weight of the truth I had uncovered. Sarah was still asleep beside me, her face serene and peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a ghost haunting the remnants of a life I once cherished. As I got out of bed, I tried to gather my thoughts, but they were a chaotic jumble of anger, sadness, and disbelief. I moved through the motions of getting ready for the day, but every action felt mechanical, as if I were on autopilot. I brushed my teeth, splashed water on my face, and dressed in silence, all the while replaying the scene from the restaurant in my mind. The image of Sarah laughing with that man haunted me, a cruel reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I made my way to the kitchen, where the smell of coffee filled the air. I poured myself a cup, the warmth of the mug grounding me momentarily. But as I took a sip, the bitterness of the coffee mirrored the bitterness in my heart. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. The children woke up soon after, their laughter and energy filling the house with a sense of normalcy that felt foreign to me. I forced a smile as I greeted them, but inside, I was a storm of emotions. I wanted to be present for them, to enjoy their innocence, but the weight of my discovery loomed over me like a dark cloud. As I sat at the breakfast table, I watched Sarah interact with the kids, her laughter ringing out like music. She was the same woman I had loved for years, yet now, I felt a chasm between us, a divide that seemed insurmountable. I wanted to reach out, to hold her and tell her how much I loved her, but the betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating any warmth I felt. After breakfast, I knew I couldn't put off the confrontation any longer. I had to know the truth, to hear her side of the story. My heart raced as I thought about what I would say, how I would approach the conversation. I felt a mix of dread and determination, knowing that this moment would change everything. "Sarah, can we talk?" I finally said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She looked up from her phone, surprise flickering across her face. "Sure, what's up?" she replied, her tone light, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I led her to the living room, where the sunlight streamed in through the windows, illuminating the space that had once felt so warm and inviting. Now, it felt like a battleground, a place where I would have to confront the woman I loved about her betrayal. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "No, it's not okay. I need to ask you something important." Her expression shifted, and I could see the tension building in her shoulders. "What is it?" she asked, her voice suddenly serious. "I ran into someone who knows you," I began, my heart pounding in my chest. "Lisa. She mentioned seeing you in the city last week, with another man." The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. I watched as her face paled, the color draining from her cheeks. "What? That's ridiculous." "I was at a conference," she exclaimed, her voice rising defensively. I felt a surge of anger at her immediate denial, but I pressed on. "Lisa said she saw you at a restaurant, laughing and drinking wine with someone." "I saw you, Sarah. I saw you with him." The admission felt like a knife twisting in my gut, but I needed her to understand the gravity of the situation. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. "Mark, I can explain." "It's not what you think," she pleaded, her voice trembling. But I was done with the excuses. I needed the truth. "Then tell me what it is. Because right now, all I see is a woman who has been lying to me for who knows how long." My voice cracked, the pain spilling over as I struggled to contain my emotions. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between love and betrayal. "Please, just listen to me," she begged, her eyes pleading. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong." "A mistake?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think this is just a mistake? You were with another man, Sarah. How can you call that a mistake?" My heart raced as I felt the anger boiling within me, a fire that threatened to consume everything in its path. "I was lonely, Mark. You've been so focused on work, and I felt neglected. I didn't know how to reach out to you. I thought I could find comfort elsewhere, but it was a terrible decision. I regret it every day." Her voice cracked, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. "Loneliness?" I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. I had been working hard to provide for our family, to build a future for us. I had thought she understood that. "So you thought cheating was the answer? You thought lying to me was better than talking to me?" I felt the betrayal cut deeper, the pain morphing into a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I know it sounds awful, and it is. But I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Mark." "I do," she cried, her voice breaking. I lost my way for a moment. I thought I could keep it separate, but it spiraled out of control. I shook my head, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "You don't get to say you love me after what you've done. You shattered my trust, Sarah. How can I believe anything you say now?" The words felt like daggers, but I couldn't hold back the truth any longer. "I'll do anything to make it right. Please, just give me a chance to prove it," she pleaded, desperation etched across her face. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but the damage had been done. The foundation of our marriage felt like quicksand, and I was terrified of sinking deeper. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of her betrayal pressed down on me, and I felt lost in a sea of confusion. I loved her, but how could I reconcile that love with the pain she had caused? As we stood there, the silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. The love I had for her battled against the betrayal that had shattered my heart, and I didn't know if I could ever find my way back. The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of our breathing. I could feel the weight of Sarah's gaze on me, her eyes pleading for understanding, for forgiveness. But how could I give her that when my heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of her betrayal? I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. Instead, I stood there, paralyzed by a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Mark, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I can't take it back. But I need you to understand that it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I never meant for it to go this far." "A moment of weakness?" I echoed, incredulous. "You don't just stumble into an affair, Sarah. You made a choice. You chose to be with someone else instead of talking to me, instead of coming to me with your feelings. You chose to lie to me." The words felt like venom on my tongue, each syllable laced with the pain I was trying to process. "I know. I know," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was scared, Mark. I felt so alone. You were always working late, and I didn't know how to reach you. I thought I could handle it, that it wouldn't affect us. But I was wrong. I see that now." "Do you really?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "Because it doesn't feel like you do. It feels like you're trying to save yourself instead of taking responsibility for what you've done." I felt a surge of anger, a fire igniting within me. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, to feel the weight of the betrayal she had inflicted on our marriage. "I am taking responsibility. I'm here, aren't I? I'm telling you the truth," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "I want to fix this. I want to make it right. I love you, Mark. I've always loved you." "Love isn't enough, Sarah," I replied, my heart aching at the truth of my words. "You've shattered my trust, and trust is the foundation of any relationship. How can I believe anything you say now? How can I trust you again after this?" "I'll do anything to earn your trust back," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll go to counseling, I'll be open and honest with you. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on us." Her eyes were wide with fear, and I could see the desperation etched on her face. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and hurt that coursed through me. "You don't get to ask me to forgive you just because you're scared of losing me. You made your choice, and now I have to deal with the consequences." I took a step back, creating distance between us, as if the physical space could somehow shield me from the emotional turmoil. "Mark, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, but I can't lose you. I can't lose our family. I'll do anything to make it right." Her words hung in the air, a desperate plea that tugged at my heartstrings. But I was torn. I loved her, and the thought of losing her felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Yet, the betrayal was fresh, raw, and I couldn't ignore the reality of what she had done. "You say you love me, but how can I believe that when you've been with someone else? How can I trust that you won't do it again?" "I promise I won't. I swear," she cried, her voice breaking. "I'll prove it to you. Just give me a chance. I'll show you that I can be the wife you deserve." Her desperation was palpable, and I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing everything we had built together. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could give her that chance. The thought of rebuilding our relationship felt daunting, like trying to piece together a shattered vase. "I need time, Sarah," I said finally, my voice heavy with resignation. "I can't just pretend everything is okay. I need to process this, to figure out what I want." "Time? But what if you decide you don't want me anymore?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if you walk away?" The fear in her eyes mirrored my own, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of empathy for her. But I quickly pushed it aside, reminding myself of the pain she had caused. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart aching. "I can't make any promises right now. I need to think." I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. The sight of her, the woman I had loved for so long, now felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. As I walked out of the room, I could hear her sobs behind me, a haunting sound that echoed in my mind. I felt like I was walking through a fog, each step heavy with uncertainty. I needed space to think, to process the whirlwind of emotions that had engulfed me. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts of our life together. I replayed memories in my head, our wedding day, the birth of our children, the moments of laughter and joy. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the betrayal that had shattered my trust. That evening, as I lay in bed, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions. Could I forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? The answers eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand. I knew I had to make a decision, but the thought of losing her felt unbearable. Yet, the thought of staying with her, of pretending everything was okay, felt like a betrayal to myself. I was caught in a web of conflicting emotions, and I didn't know how to untangle myself. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. I had to confront the reality of our situation, to face the truth of what had happened. And as much as I wanted to hold on to the love we had shared, I knew that I couldn't ignore the pain that had been inflicted upon me. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a blur, a haze of confusion and heartache. I moved through life like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling utterly disconnected from everything around me. The laughter of my children, the warmth of the sun streaming through the windows, even the smell of coffee brewing in the morning, all of it felt distant, as if I were watching it unfold from behind a glass wall. I found myself replaying the moments of our marriage, searching for signs I had missed, clues that could have warned me of the impending storm. I thought back to our wedding day, the way Sarah had looked in her white dress, radiant and full of hope. I remembered the vows we had exchanged, promises of love and fidelity that now felt like hollow echoes. How had we gone from that blissful day to this painful reality? I recalled the little things, the late nights at work, the missed dinners, the way Sarah had seemed to withdraw over the past few months. I had attributed it to stress, to the demands of parenting and work. But now, I wondered if I had been blind to the cracks forming in our relationship. Had I been so consumed by my own responsibilities that I had failed to notice her loneliness? The guilt gnawed at me, a relentless reminder that I had played a part in this unraveling. I had always believed that love was enough, that our bond was unbreakable. But now, I was faced with the harsh reality that love alone couldn't sustain a marriage. Trust was the foundation, and that foundation had crumbled beneath us. I spent hours lost in thought, sitting in the living room surrounded by family photos that now felt like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I could see the smiles on our faces, the joy we had shared, but it all felt tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. I felt like I was living in a museum of our past, each picture a testament to a love that had been shattered. One evening, as I sat on the couch, I picked up a photo of our family from a vacation we had taken a few years ago. We were all laughing, the sun setting behind us, casting a golden glow over our faces. I felt a pang of longing for those moments, for the simplicity of our happiness. But as I stared at the picture, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. How could she have shared those moments with me while hiding another life? I thought about the man she had been with, the stranger who had taken my place in her heart, even if only for a moment. I felt a surge of anger at the thought of him, a man I didn't even know, yet who had invaded my life in the most intimate way. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. The real confrontation needed to be with Sarah. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself oscillating between anger and sadness. I wanted to scream at her, to make her feel the pain she had caused me, but I also wanted to hold her and tell her that I loved her. The conflicting emotions left me feeling exhausted, and I knew I had to make a decision about our future. One night, after the children had gone to bed, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. Sarah had been trying to reach out, to talk, but I had kept my distance, unsure of how to navigate the choppy waters of our relationship. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for the love we had shared, but for the future I had envisioned for us, a future that now felt uncertain. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. I needed to confront Sarah again, to lay bare my feelings and fears. I needed to understand if there was a path forward for us, or if we were destined to drift apart. "Sarah," I called, my voice steady but laced with emotion. She appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "Can we talk?" "Of course," she replied, her voice soft. She took a seat across from me, her eyes searching mine for answers. I could see the vulnerability in her gaze, the fear of what I might say. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my heart racing. "About us, about our marriage. I can't pretend that everything is okay. I'm still hurt, and I don't know if I can trust you again." "I understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've broken your trust, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I'll do anything to make it right." I felt a flicker of hope at her words, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. "But what does that mean? What does it look like for us moving forward? I need to know if you're truly committed to rebuilding our relationship, or if this is just about saving face." "I'm committed, Mark. I want to go to counseling, to work through this together. I want to be open and honest with you about everything. I want to rebuild what we had," she said, her voice earnest. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I want that too, but it's going to take time. I need to see that you're serious about this. I need to know that you're willing to put in the effort to regain my trust." "I will. I promise," she said, her eyes pleading. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As we sat there, the tension in the room began to ease slightly. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. But I also knew that hope alone wouldn't be enough. We had a long road ahead of us, filled with challenges and uncertainties. "I need to take this one step at a time," I said finally, my voice steady. "I can't promise that I'll forgive you right away, but I'm willing to try. I want to see if we can rebuild what we had." "Thank you," she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "I'll do everything I can to prove to you that I'm worth it." As we sat together, I felt a mix of emotions, hope, fear, and uncertainty. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. We had a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to rediscover the love that had once brought us together. But I also knew that it wouldn't be easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, and the scars of betrayal would linger long after the initial pain had faded. I was willing to try, but I also knew that I had to protect my heart. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of resolve wash over me. We had a long journey ahead, but I was ready to face it. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship, and hopefully, we would emerge stronger on the other side. The days turned into weeks, and as we began the arduous journey of rebuilding our relationship, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Each day was a delicate balance between hope and fear, love and doubt. We started attending couples counseling, a step I had initially dreaded but soon realized was essential. It provided a safe space for us to confront our issues, to communicate openly about our feelings, and to begin the slow process of healing. In those sessions, I learned to articulate my pain, to express the depth of my betrayal. I shared how Sarah's infidelity had shattered my trust and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about our marriage. I could see the remorse in her eyes as she listened, her heartache palpable. She was committed to understanding my pain, to acknowledging the hurt she had caused, and it was a small but significant step toward rebuilding what we had lost. Sarah, too, opened up about her feelings of loneliness and neglect. She spoke of the moments when she felt isolated, when my long hours at work had created a chasm between us. It was painful to hear, but I realized that her actions, while unforgivable, were rooted in her own struggles. We had both been drifting, caught up in the demands of life, and it had taken a betrayal to force us to confront the reality of our relationship. As the weeks passed, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. We started to reconnect, sharing laughter and moments of intimacy that had been absent for so long. We went on dates, rediscovered our shared interests, and even took the time to reminisce about the early days of our relationship. It was a bittersweet experience, filled with both joy and sorrow, as we navigated the complexities of our past while trying to forge a new path forward. But the road was not without its challenges. There were moments when the pain of her betrayal resurfaced, when I would catch myself feeling insecure or questioning her commitment. I had to remind myself that healing takes time, and that it was okay to feel vulnerable. I learned to communicate my fears, to express my need for reassurance, and Sarah responded with patience and understanding. She was willing to put in the work, to show me that she was committed to our marriage. One evening, as we sat on the couch together, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were watching a movie, the soft glow of the screen illuminating our faces, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. I turned to Sarah, her head resting on my shoulder, and I realized that I was beginning to trust her again. It was a fragile trust, but it was there, and it felt like a step in the right direction. "Thank you for being patient with me," I said softly, my heart full. "I know this hasn't been easy for either of us, but I appreciate everything you're doing to make this work." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with sincerity. "I love you, Mark. I'm so grateful for this chance to rebuild our relationship. I promise I'll never take you for granted again." Her words resonated deep within me, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. As we continued to navigate our journey, I realized that forgiveness was not a destination but a process. There would be good days and bad days, moments of joy and moments of doubt. But I was committed to the journey, to the possibility of rediscovering the love that had once brought us together. Months passed, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they began to fade into the background. We learned to communicate more openly, to prioritize our relationship amidst the chaos of life. We made a conscious effort to spend quality time together, to nurture our connection, and to create new memories as a family. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table with our children, I looked around at the faces I loved most in the world. I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. We had weathered the storm, and while the journey had been painful, it had also brought us closer together. We had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the importance of communication and trust in our relationship. As I tucked the kids into bed that night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had learned that love is not just about the good times. It's about weathering the storms together, about choosing to fight for each other even when the odds seem stacked against you. Later that evening, as Sarah and I sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, I took her hand in mine. "I'm glad we're in this together," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "I believe we can make it through anything as long as we're honest with each other." She squeezed my hand, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. "I believe that too. I love you, Mark, and I'm committed to making this work." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, and while the journey was far from over, I knew that we were on the right path. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship, and together, we would find our way back to each other. As I leaned in to kiss her, I felt a sense of warmth envelop us, a reminder that love, even when tested, can endure. We were not just survivors of betrayal, we were partners, committed to rebuilding our lives together, one day at a time.